Welcome to Decade. This is a game that the developers sent me it. They sent me a review key. Now, what's interesting about this review key is they never actually specified like how much up, like up to what point to stop the review, which is usually what people do. But however, I'm not going to show you the entire game. Apparently, these keys. It seems like it's like mostly the full game, so I won't be playing the full thing. This game is interesting. It's a narrative game about changing time and history by sending things and people back to the past. What's fascinating about that is that I've talked about this before, that narratives in games and the ways that games handle narratives always sort of fall short for me, because the problem is that they never give you something like a visual novel, which allows you to sort of traverse time and go back and forth into these different spaces, right? To go back into a certain sort of point in a scene that you can replay and sort of see what different branch there is. Okay, look, listen. Listen. They said this is okay to do, so we're just gonna try it, all right? I'm Licorice. I'm just gonna go in. And this game embodies that entire thing, with a very interesting concept, too. The world has ended. Metallic rain has pounded all life on Earth into a silvery black pulp. You were raised in a facility designed to protect against the rains. 5 years ago, when even these facilities deteriorated, you left along with thousands of other children to try and find some way of surviving. You were 12. The rain slaughtered them. They slaughtered each other. But you and 3 younger children that you managed to protect found this place. A sophisticated bunker built deep into the side of a mountain, which draws water from deep underground, able to synthesize food from its algae. It won't last forever, but it has kept you all alive these past 5 years. You spent that time learning about the strange machine contained within its bunker. A machine that allows you to send someone into the past and retrieve them after they have spent 10 years there. Now it's time to use it. And that's a very interesting premise. I've talked about time travel stories a lot on the channel. Christopher Nolan is sort of the most popular director that's currently using this concept very, very often, right? The thing about his concepts is that the stories can feel sort of lackluster in their own way. They're interesting, but it's also a very difficult concept to work with because of how much detail you need to make it successful. And this takes that and takes it a step further and says, what if you had control over the time travel? In many ways, and I think I have to play it in a certain way, because if I do this, sorry, it's because of the volume thing. I put it too low. Sometimes the game will, if you go full screen and you don't go, and you go windowed, it freezes the game a little. And the volume could be a little bit higher for some of this stuff, but not too high for the music. You'll see a gap at the bottom. Don't mind the gap. Is there a way for me to hide the gap? There is. Perfect. There is absolutely a way for me to hide the gap. That's amazing. Can I just get the words of a shirt? Perfect. Sorry. And I like that concept, because when you play a time travel game, it can sort of go as simple as, say, Titanfall 2, where all you really do is you go into the past in some scenes, in some very specific levels. Or it may be like a visual novel, where you're just deciding different choices. This seems to take that as a full concept and says, what if we made a game based entirely around time travel? We made it so that you had to think about how your actions would have repercussions across the rest of the timeline. That's what this game is. So right now, it's the end. This is the present day. You're fairly certain there are no more humans on this planet. Goon. Sorry. Metal rain falls almost constantly, churning everything into a silvery pulp. With a strange machine, you find yourself living inside. You find there's a small chance to do something, perhaps. You can just leave the bunker? What? I just leave? Was this stupidity or madness? Maybe you really wanted to die. Even the children thought it wasn't a good idea. Still, they trusted you. Why did they just let me do this? The rains had worsened since you were last outside. Sometimes they would be calm for most of the day. Maybe you would find shelter before they picked up again. God, that is a terrifying image. And what's interesting about this game is that it uses FMV for every single cutscene, or like most of the cutscenes. In fact, most of the aesthetic of this game seems to be painstakingly handcrafted to try and capture a very realistic view of what's going on. And that's amazing to me, because that takes a lot of effort from what seems to be this dev's first game ever. I don't know why I chose this option. I feel like I just doomed them to a life or death. And this is some very strange music. But it's so... It makes you feel incredibly uneasy. This is a very interesting soundtrack. Oh my god. Oh my god. Walter vibe. That was an amazing cutscene. That cutscene was incredibly uneasy to watch. It felt, and the cinematography felt a lot like, I don't know how to explain it, but the cinematography reminded me a lot of like the old school days when you would just go online and there'd be a random video that you weren't really sure if you should see, but was just there. And let's say you weren't really sure if it should exist in some way. And that's the gist of this game, is we're trying to get away from that. Whatever that was, that person got melted by the acid rain. And I love this as a concept because it seems like you have a party to manage. You have to figure out how to send them back into time to change the timeline of things. But how do you stop acid rain? My assumption right now is that acid rain is similar to the acid rain that we have today, where it's the result and the culmination of a number of choices made by, corporations that have caused some level of climate change to the point where nothing that we have is safe anymore. We have basically no good timelines. We have a save data. Oh, I can save my game. I probably should have saved this sooner. There's a button over here that says Jag's drawing. I don't even know what this is. Jag is this kid over here. Jag. And actually, if you hover over the faces, they even move. Everything about this game. I don't think there's a single thing in this game that wasn't created with a real video of some kind. The winded mode. The winded mode is going to be a little annoying to deal with. There we go. Sending somebody to the past inevitably changes the present. But if you can retrieve enough information on such things as astral events, sonic parameters, and environmental idiosyncrasies, you can send a person back safely while ensuring your current existence. I'm going to assign a child. Send who back to the decade of 462 to 472 to discover what happened. These children are 8 and 9 and 11 years old. This is a very fascinating story too. It really harkens back to the ideas, like say something like The Giver, that book for instance, and the ways that book placed and like thrust responsibility into the lap of this child who had to take over the role of having memories of the past world, of the old world. This feels a bit like that. It's this idea of having to go out of your comfort zone because in a circumstance of survival, the world doesn't care about who you are, how old you are, what your skills are. It only cares about whether you can or can't survive. And so it's like this 8-year-old child, Mons, is going to go back to, I don't know, for the 462 to 472. I don't know, this 8-year-old. I need to figure out what the stats mean too. Sensitivity and determination. We have 2 stats like this. Ula is highest in sensitivity and low in determination. Mons is high in determination but low in sensitivity. What does this mean? Maybe we send the sensitive child, who's also older and thus has a better grasp on the English language back, to help me, or whatever language that we speak here, to tell us what happened back in the year 462. Off in the conversation at any time. Each character has their own personality but will be affected. What? Click on a character to close the chat window. You can pick off where you left off in the conversation at any time. Each character has their own personality but will be dramatically affected as they age by the periods they visit as well as the things you say to them. That's amazing. That it's like a series of that everything you do can affect them and change them, and I love that because it goes to show that they really thought about how time travel should affect things. And again, similar to how Tenet got really complex with a story that sort of fell apart in certain places, this keeps that complexity but seems to make a much better story as a whole. Vetiver's poetry added to inventory. Ula gained timid trait. I can't stop crying, says Ula. Take your time. It's okay, Ula, you're back now. I think because she's highly sensitive and timid, I think I should comfort her. It's okay, Ula, you're back now. She's 21! Oh, it's Animal Crossing. Sorry, it's not Animal Crossing. it's not Animal Crossing. Well, it is, but it's also, it's also Okami and stuff. This place seems so much smaller than I remember it. Darker. Tell me about the past you just came from. Who am I? What is my character traits? What are they? This may seem incredible to you, but there were no rains. Well, not always. And when there was rain, it wasn't toxic at all. Even so, it was a very dangerous time. Why? There was no fear of death. People were violent and impulsive. Go on. It was a strange time. People roamed, scavenging the remnants of cities and civilization, hunting the few animals that existed. There was no universal communication system beyond radio. They lived lives of private endeavor, seeking only to make themselves stronger, strong enough to kill and donate in the conflicts which arose whenever they came across another. Is it? Yeah. Is that donate? That might be donate. Or is it some other word that's supposed to be there? I'm not sure. People killed for resources, for territory, but a lot of the time, just because they saw it as a virtue. They called this way of thinking Vetiverism. Now, what's interesting is that I thought this game was based off of real events. I thought we were going to go back in time and like ice Hitler or something, right? That's what I thought we were going to do in this game. But that's how good the aesthetic of this game is, that you can't really tell that it's not real life. The aesthetic of this game makes it feel like it's real life, but in reality, this is all a fictional world, okay? I had no clue, because when I googled Vetiverism, I was like, what in the world does this mean? The first link that I got was for a water company. So, I don't know if that's like, normal, but in my city, apparently there's a water company that is not named the same, but comes up as the first result, which feels apocryphal, given what this game is. Very apocryphal. What's interesting too is that the way that she describes this world, it doesn't necessarily sound unlike our own. And I'm actually very curious how much of this does tie into real life, or if it's all fictional, because this is just the way that we live now. Like, we are just hunting animals, the few animals that existed for our food. We take as much as we want because we believe that that's a way to make us stronger, right? There's a lot of like a mirror into our current life as it is today, depending on what part of the world that you look at. But I would say as a whole across human history, this sort of behavior has been a constant. What is this poetry you brought? How did you survive killing as a virtue? She's sensitive. Maybe. How did you survive? I care about you first. I was taken in by a small family. They protected me for a few years. Men seemed willing to protect me. After that, I was alone, but I stayed away from others. In the forest, mostly. Men seemed willing to protect me. I think that's a very, very powerful sentence because that implies so much. There's a very deep implication behind what this means because it's either an experience that she had before she went back to the past, that she sort of knew in a way that, the way that the world treats women, and like the way specifically that she would be treated as a woman is not necessarily good, especially in a post-apocalyptic time where there are no laws in society to really sort of keep you safe. Or if that's something that she learned as a result of her being in that past life, in that past timeline, and maybe there was a period of time when she was there before she was found by this small family, where she was, at the mercy of whatever this cold and seemingly incredibly violent world was. Didn't people band together? Sometimes people acted together sometimes, but only temporarily. Community was seen as weak, shameful. Even family was seen as dubious, a mere consequence of sex. Huh. What is this poetry you brought? It's an expression of the ideals of Vetiverism. Thought that might help us understand it. Sorry, let me just, I can pick up the conversation at any time. This may be loud, but I think I like the sound effects a lot. It's just the cutscenes can get very, very sort of incredibly loud. Right-click to delete save files, and then you can save over it. Okay, that's a little annoying that you have to like click to delete the save to save over it, because if you left-click, you load the save. But that's fine. What do you think about Vetiverism? It was without a doubt why the world has ended up like it has. It had its own concepts of beauty, but nothing beyond them. Its own concept of morality, and nothing beyond that. It was such a singular and dominant idea that could only end this way. What about the variables that we need to travel to an earlier period? And this is also an interesting idea here. It has its own concepts of beauty, but nothing beyond them. It has its own concept of morality and nothing beyond that. It's a sentence that sounds almost... what's the word? It's a sentence that sounds almost nonsensical. Because on the surface, it's like, well, if you have morals, and those morals are dictated on like an axis of truth of some kind, right? And then it's like, how can you ever go beyond what a moral is? Because morals tend to be very sort of absolute in the way that they encompass things. But it's the way that morality is so subjective and is based off of various ideals and concepts that makes it something that you can go beyond or before. And so it's interesting to say this because the morality, she's saying specifically that it's not as good as you would believe. It's not as good as it could be based on whatever knowledge or idea or like ideations that she had about morality. Whether it's because of the life that she knew before the end times, or because of something that she experienced elsewhere, she knows that these morals in some way are lacking. In the same way that, for instance, the moral of a cult might be to induct you in and isolate you from your support group. You know, she sees it that same way, but with whatever this concept is, this like belief system is. She sees it as almost inferior to something. And in beauty as well, because beauty is a very interesting word to use here. Beauty is like, it could be anything. It could be art. It could be the way that we see things. It could be the way that we see the world. It could be something as grand as architecture, or something as small as the way that your toilet works. Like, do you have a bidet, or do you use toilet paper? There's a beauty in that, right? Deschamps, or whatever his name is, toilet, was made to say something about this. What she's saying is that there's a concept of beauty, but like, there are concepts, but there is nothing else to it. There are concepts, but there's nothing beyond them. And actually, that's an interesting reading too, that there are simply concepts of these things, but nothing beyond that might even imply that there's no practice of it. Because a concept is one thing. A concept is something that we all can have, right? You all have amazing ideas about how the stream should be run, about how these reviews should be done, about how, you know, I should play games, okay? I go on, I play a game, and you go, oh, you didn't see the key over there. Well, but guess what, buddy? You have the concept, I'm executing, all right? And maybe they're not executing the concepts in the way that they said. And maybe what she's trying to say, in her sort of own way, is that whatever they believed in, whatever these concepts are, they're not being acted out in a way that is congruous with these concepts. Congruent. What about the variables we need to travel to an earlier period? I'm going to ignore her plight and the fact that she's gone through an incredibly traumatic experience to say, we need to figure out what to do. I couldn't find any. I'm sorry. I think they might exist. There seem to be places that contain a lot of old stuff, information, but they were too dangerous for me. Wick, I had to confess something. What do you have to confess? You know you can tell me anything, right, Ula? She's sensitive. I don't say go on because she's sensitive. You have to like... This is the thing about helping people open up, and this sounds very manipulative, but lending an open ear to somebody and opening your heart to somebody is just as important as getting them to open up to you. Because if you open up first, in many ways people can feel comfortable with that. Maud, are you here? Can we have a close conversation about this? When I opened up to the Maud about certain things, I noticed that she felt a lot happier in life, and she started to say, okay, maybe I do want to play board games with this guy. Even though it was such a strange time that I went to, there were moments when I thought about not coming back. Okay, sometimes it's worth it to ignore how sensitive somebody is and to ask them why and to press them further. Because we also have an obligation within our world today, within the context of this game, to get answers to questions. And these answers to questions may help save us all together. And we need to figure out what's going on. And it's important for me to say, to not say that that's understandable. I just need to know why first. And also, how would I even know that it's understandable? She has just described a life where, aside from the fact that there's no acid rain, that the danger is other people. And I don't know if that's any better. Here, we have a well with algae. We can make food from algae, like algae bars. That doesn't seem bad. Why? I'm not as tough as all of you. That's sad. I thought she would say something like something amazing happened there, or there was some aspect of that life that she enjoyed, but no, it was her own insecurities and her own perception of herself. This is a fascinating game so far. Within this one text box, we've gotten a piece of writing that, to me, has been incredibly powerful, right? Touches on a lot of very complex topics, touches on and builds a world that is fully alive in a way that doesn't feel contrived. Like, the intro is obviously contrived because we start off in a world that's been assailed by acid rain. We are the last, at least to us, the last survivors, right? But it's the way that this game tells its story in a way that doesn't make any leaps of faith, that doesn't ask you to ignore certain things, that simply tackles everything head on, and then introduces things in a way that I think flows very, very well into the rest of the fabric of the game without seeming out of place. All the while giving you just enough to sate your curiosity, but not enough to be full of it, and wanting you to press on even further and further. All the while in a framework of a game that, to me, at least so far, says that I need to think about how to approach these conversations because of how these people are. How Ula is compared to Jag and Mons. This is, and we've only done one single event. I'm not as tough as all of you. That's why you're so important to us. Yes, you are Uller in your own way. These are two very interesting responses, and I actually love the way that these responses are very complex too. A lot of games will tend to go sort of the Mass Effect wheel. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but a lot of games' responses will be very simplistic on the surface. Some games subvert this, like The Witcher, where they simply allow you to make a choice, but it's sort of like a pre-scripted choice, and then the character does their own thing based on their own personality. Here, the choices are neither simplistic nor predetermined in the way that, you know, The Witcher 3 or something like Mass Effect is. It feels a lot like you're trying to find the right words to say to somebody because of what they've just gone through. Because both of these things mean very different things. That's why you're so important to us, is an affirmation of both her insecurity, but also helping her sort of like try to reframe it as a strength. And to say that that's the reason why we love you. Is because you weren't so tough. Is because you had that softness, right? You look at soft shell crab. That underneath that like soft shell outside, if I crack you open and I like split you in half, inside would be ooey gooey meaty goodness and such a soft pillowy texture with such a sweet flavor. And sometimes you might even have like roe in there, and that roe tastes so nice and egg-like. Oh, I want to eat the soft shell crab so bad. Like a therapist, yeah. And in a way, that's an interesting point of view to have. Because it even points to a different type of like micro-macro game. A lot of games like this can have a lot of micro decisions. Like if you ever play a visual novel, you were the one making these decisions as a character within the game. But you're not really managing the state of certain things, you're managing bars. Here, you're managing what feels like a person. You're not just touching on certain like bars and stats, even though you have some idea of what these stats could be. It feels more like you're here talking to a person and trying to communicate with them in a way that you think is best. Because to me, these bars are so vague so as to tell me nothing about them. And you may get some personality traits, but for the most part, it's like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to go about this, and I'm trying to decide the right prescription for somebody, because it seems like I am the debriefer and I need to help them through this. And so do I reaffirm and sort of readjust her understanding of herself? Or do I say, yes, you are Ula in your own way, to deny her feeling of herself and to reassure her that she actually is tough? And do I simply say that, well, listen, maybe it's better for you to see yourself as tough in your own way? In a way, both of these say the same thing, but they go about it in a very different way. But I think I'm going to reaffirm what she thinks about itself, but I'm going to reshape it as a strength. Because I want to eat the soft shell crab. I don't understand what you mean. Of course you don't understand what I mean. You just spent 10 years in a hellscape. You have qualities none of us have. Qualities that might not seem useful now, but will be essential when we create a new world. I sound like a cult leader. What qualities? I don't know. I've never met you in my life. Fertility? I don't know about this one. Sensuality? I don't know. These are all interesting choices. Some of these choices, and her question is interesting because she's no longer the 11-year-old child. She's now a 21-year-old woman. And in many ways, I think even if these kids are like 8 and 9, they are effectively in the mindset of an adult, just without the capabilities and without sort of the experience, right? It harkens back to ye olden days when you'd have the chimney sweep kids, and they'd go down the chimneys and they'd be working for money starting at the age of 5. Life circumstances make you grow up very, very quickly. But this is specifically, she's grown up even more, and in a timeline that's completely not of her own, and she's grown up even further within that. And so she isn't so easy to manipulate and say, okay, well, like, yeah, you have qualities about yourself. Because that's something that you can say to somebody who doesn't really know much about themselves, right? And they will just accept. But it's when you deal with somebody who knows about themselves and knows about the world more, that's when you need to really sort of think about, okay, well, what do I mean by this? The problem is that I'm not a therapist, so I didn't think about this. So she caught me in a lie. She caught me red-handed, and I don't know what to answer. But these answers are interesting. You get a set list of them, and beauty, sensuality, creativity, fertility, gentleness, all but one is one that she can appreciate. Because who cares if you're beautiful? You can't see yourself. Who cares if you're sensual? You can't feel yourself in that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are traits for somebody else. Your fertility? I don't know if you give a shit about your fertility. How many of you care how motile your sperm is, or how how much luster your eggs have, right? Like that isn't a concern for you. It's a concern for your partner. It's a concern for the people around you to care about. Maybe you, if you want to have a child, right? But ultimately, it's really about other people's whims on you, and even your gentleness, because you, in a way, the people who are most gentle, they're never really gentle with themselves. She's not being gentle with herself here. The only thing that speaks to who she is, that she could own herself within herself, is her creativity. Fertility. Thank you, Wick. She gained the cedar trait. Fuck. What have I done? I should have never chosen fertility. I should have never chosen fertility. Right click to change music only. What? Oh. This is the default. Wait, I need to turn up the volume for this. That's a very cool concept. She comes from that past back into the future where everything's gone, right? But when she comes back, what does she bring with herself? She brings a poetry book from that time, espousing the ideas and the mindset of whatever this sort of group is, whatever this sort of like movement is. But she also brings with it artifacts of that world that she was engrossed in for 10 years of her life. 10 years. The music. And the feeling. The music. And the art. Also, really cool shader effect. It's very warbly. It's nice. Static image, but it makes it very, very floaty as it goes back and forth. And it's crazy because this isn't really like an important part of the game, but it's made important by the amount of work that's been placed into it. Usually, in a lot of games, I would want to say that the music, the soundscape, takes a backseat to the rest of the game. When you go into a game like this, it's rare for the music to take such a forward front stage and the sound to take such a front stage in telling the story too. But the music that was there before, that sounded almost electronic, that sounded very futuristic in its own way, because electronica was seen as sort of the sounds of the future, has been replaced by these noises that feel almost inhuman, almost industrial, almost chaotic. In a way, it sounds like a recording of noises that you would hear within a factory. It's not really pleasing to the ear. It's the sound It's a very brutal type of sound. Even the artwork that you see is almost scratched up in different places that makes it feel like it's a piece, like an artifact of that time, where it's purely utilitarian almost, where it's just used and not really seen for the sake of beauty. Which she did say, they have concepts of beauty, they have concepts of morality, but nothing beyond those. Why is it... Sorry, it's just this is the this sounds like when you open up like a beatmaker thing, or you open, if you open FL Studio and you play with the piano roll. It's the same thing. Like, you can make a pretty sick beats. Okay, so Jag's drawing is this. It's actually pretty cool. I didn't realize that you could scroll down a little, but he has this drawing. But we also have a Vetiverus poetry book. The man who does not, corrupted and dissolved, a path that leads only away from essence, to a place of non-existence. The man who does not is dependent, drawn to structure, compensations. He does not know that all things are paid for. They will do to him what he refuses to do to them. The man who does not destroy has no sense of time. He attempts to parlay with death, to cheat time. He seeks a pathetic eternity. The man who does not destroy belongs to nowhere. His lack of action is a lack of understanding. He does not know why the cat kills, the flower wilts. He cannot exist among them. The man who does not destroy is a lie. The man who does not destroy cannot love, only contort. Half-formed solutions temper him, owner of nothing himself. Cielito, Vetiverus songs. This is a very fascinating piece of text. It starts off with this interesting writing device where it starts up with an ambiguity and it leaves you with a question of what this is. But it sort of builds upon this ambiguity to paint a picture of what it is without ever naming it. Without ever naming the concept directly, you can almost try to infer what it is. The man who does not, and it stops there, does not what? Corrupted and dissolve. So you're left with this question of, the man who does not do what is corrupted and dissolved? Why? What is this thing, and why do they believe in the corruption and the dissolution of a person? And it's interesting because our concepts, your concept right now of what makes you corrupted and dissolved of being a human being is different from mine. I have a very human perspective on this where, like, I believe that everyone should be free to be who they want to be and that people should be safe in the way that they should be. Other people see that as a weakness, as a corruption, and as a dissolution of what it means to be human in a natural world, where survival of the fittest sort of comes into play. A path that leads only away from essence to a place of non-existence. Essence and non-existence, these are two different words, but they're used. It's a very interesting usage because essence and existence don't really mirror each other, but the concepts behind them do. It's the concept of, like, you as a being, you as a thing in the world that exists. Both of these things sort of have that same backing concept, and it's used in contrast to each other to say that if you don't do this thing, you're going away from an existence that is at all real, that is at all true. But it doesn't really talk about whether or not it's a good or bad existence, but it sort of implicitly frames it as a bad thing. Because it wouldn't care so much about you walking away from that path of existence if it wasn't a good thing in the eyes of the people who wrote this thing. That's a very deep writing so far. The man who does not, whatever this thing is dependent, drawn to structure, compensations, a mirror to our current world. The man who does not is drawn to structure and compensations, but are really a mirror to the sort of all of human society across all time. The barter theory has been roughly debunked to some degree, and we know that currency has been in power for a very long time. The compensation to what you do, and structure is the things that we've built in order to provide a level of stability and sustenance in our lives, right? Like, humanity made society because of the benefits of society, and that came with a level of structure, right? Obviously, there's sort of like superstructures that were built on top of that sort of go beyond that, and the structure of, say, the Roman Empire is very different from like Canada. To some degree. The Canadians are closer to the Romans than we would like to, believe if you look at history. But it's still a structure as a whole. And so this person who doesn't do this thing wants to go towards that structure and wants to be compensated for it. But compensation is interesting to use here because compensation stands in contrast to sort of the natural way of compensation. The natural way of compensation, and this is sort of true of many different sort of like living beings in the world, is that you get to live a life. For instance, like an animal does not die. An animal simply gets to live the entire time. An animal gets to continue to live this entire time too. They never really get to, like, they don't get to, they aren't, it isn't bad for them to live in this world. They get to continue to live this entire time. And whatever that means is something that they'll have to think about themselves and figure out on their own. Sorry, I have to BRB. I have to go open the air door. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry. I'm back. POV, it's COVID. You're going to school, and your professor who's giving the remote talk has just been called down for like dinner, or their like cat has like tipped over the webcam, and that spent 5 minutes fixing it. Sorry. But yeah, the natural state of the world is that you are trying to survive, and things just sort of survive for the sake of surviving, right? Compensation is almost a concept that's above that. You survive, but in many ways, a lot of things, fight for territory and resources, right? People do this, but some animals do too. A lot of animals will sort of scope out a territory of their own and will sort of fight to keep that territory. Pretty sure lions do this, actually. Actually, quite a few animals do. If not every animal, right? So it's interesting to sort of say this, but if you think about this in terms of humanity, though, what does that mean for humanity? It's usually going to mean something like a monetary compensation, so something above the norm, but even above something like maybe even territory and resources, something above even sort of the base needs of a life, right? It's not just the food that you eat, it's not just the land that you want to keep for yourself, to keep yourself safe and to have like a domain of some sort. It's also the extra things in life, in the ways that you and I might get in a fist fight over $10,000. Like I'm not kidding you, chat. If somebody said $1 million to punch someone in my chat in the face for $1 million, I would do it. Why? Because I want that compensation for the work and the pain that you gave my fist. He does not know that all things are paid for. They will do to him what he refuses to do to them. That's a very interesting thing. And it feels interesting to see these two lines together. So poetry, I've been learning, is a lot about the structure of the words themselves too. Poetry is not just about the rhyming, but it's also about just the general structure of these things as well. The fact that these two are within the same paragraph, it's the author of this fake book that is within this universe, a real book that is actually the game developer, but we sort of, and this is the funny thing about games in general, but that this game has done so well so far, is that I forget that these words are not coming from these characters. Usually when you play a game, you're very acutely aware that the things that you're seeing and the things that you're interacting with come from a developer. But in this game, I forget. And I think to myself, these are real things that exist in the world somewhere, and I happen to be finding them like an archaeologist. So again, kudos to them for really nailing this level of immersion in such a simple interface. He does not know that all things are paid for. It's being related to they will do to him what he refuses to do to them. Let's read this backwards, because usually that helps. They will do to him what he refuses to do to them. So we know that whatever this does not thing is, it's a thing that you can do to something or to somebody. It's a thing that you can do to some entity that is not yourself. And maybe you can even do it to yourself, because they can do it to you. You are just as susceptible to this thing that the main person in the story is not doing. That going down this path they're avoiding. It's a thing that affects all things then, because if you can do it to something else, then they can do it to you. Then it's something that is universal in the world in some way, at least within the world of where you live in, right? In my world, some things are more universal than others, right? Compared to your world. But this seems to be one of those things. He does not know that all things are paid for. That's interesting because, in truth, the things that you see in the world have already paid the price to be there. Everything that you see around you has paid a very steep, heavy cost to sort of be a part of the world around us. The dirt that you see has paid the cost of coming out of a worm's asshole, right? The plants that you see have paid the cost of being eaten by a bird and being shat out only to land in a garden somewhere. The animals that you see have paid the cost of sex, which in many ways is sort of like you being paid, but maybe for some animals it's like being paid. For other animals, like the anglerfish, the one with the little light bulb on its head, you pay the cost of having sex. Because if you didn't know, that fish becomes the sex organ. Yes, it has sex, it attaches itself to the body of its mate, and it slowly shrinks until it dies and becomes just testicle. It's a very sad life that I wish I could experience. And that's what this is trying to say, I think. Because it's saying that all things are already paid for. That there is no need for compensation. That there is no need for a price for things. Because everything has already had its price paid for. It's all there for you to take. Which is an interesting way of looking at it. Because it's also this idea that's very selfish. It's very sort of self-serving. It makes you believe that everything there belongs to you in some way. Because it's already been paid for. But it doesn't really say who, but the way that it says this implies that it's paid for whoever this relates to, the man. But who paid it? In what form? We don't know. It just makes the assumption that all things have been paid for. In a way, I think this ties back to what Ula was talking about when she says, there's a concept of morality, but nothing beyond. That there's this concept of all things having paid for, but as to this sort of detail of, okay, well, what does that really mean? There's been no thought behind it. There's been no philosophical discourse. It's just been accepted as truth, as a scripture of some kind, right? That almost like a commandment that they just sort of believe in. The man who does not destroy has no sense of time. We finally get an idea of what it means to do not. Like, what is the thing that this person is not doing that could be done to themselves and the world around them? It's destroying things. It's destruction. The man who does not, and it's interesting because this is now, I think, when it brings in this topic, it seems to try to justify why destruction. Before, it was trying to tell you what it is like to live without it. But here, now it's trying to justify why it is destruction and why you must destroy. The man who does not destroy has no sense of time. He attempts to parlay with death, to cheat time. He seeks a pathetic eternity. Because maybe in this timeline, there is no such thing as sort of entropy. There's no such thing as aging. There's no such thing as you slowly dying off, right? Or maybe what it's trying to say is that if you seek a life of peace, that your peace will come as well. That this peace and the seeking of peace is a mutual act. That if you afford somebody that peace, that they would afford it to you as well. That they would allow you to have to partake in it too, right? Maybe it's a co-op game that you're trying to go for. And in doing so, you parlay with death to cheat time. Because to destroy is to also subject yourself to destruction. And I think this is also interesting because it's in the ways that it implies things with the absence of what it says that also says something where if you partake in destruction, you now subject yourself to a destruction. Which is interesting. This whole piece of writing is interesting. It's a very complex piece of writing that I think you could actually go over for a very long period of time. But it's specifically in the ways that it uses the existence of something, and then it's like it implies things both because it says it directly, but also implies something else because it doesn't say it, or it says the opposite of what would make that thing true. It's a very complex piece of writing. The man who does not destroy belongs to nowhere. His lack of action is a lack of understanding. He does not know why the cat kills, why the flower wilts. He cannot exist among them. And this is sort of giving justification on a human level. Whereas before, it gave it on an individual level, and almost on a spiritual level. This one is giving it in a much more practical level of your understanding of the world and how you could be more human. It's trying to equate the act of destruction with the act of being whatever a person is. I'm saying human here, but really this could be anything. It could be cyborgs for all we know. We don't really know if these people are people. We don't know if they're cyborgs. We have no clue. All we know is that the characters that we have are humans, but we don't know about back then. And it's saying that the man who does not destroy belongs to nowhere, which is a very interesting phrase. I forget the term for it, but is it axiomatic truth? It's like, it's some way of saying something that is so obvious so as to be a truth simply by its utterance. Where it's simply saying it makes it a truth because you cannot say otherwise because it is simply that obvious. It's trying to do that same thing here. The man who does not destroy belongs to nowhere because everywhere is a world of destruction, which is interesting to think about, because the context of the game is that we're in the future when the world has been destroyed by acid rain. And everything is dead. As far as we know, everyone's dead. And if the world is full of destruction, as it says there, then it totally makes sense, because I can sort of see a way that this philosophy, this way of life, leads to the current world that we live in today. This espousing of destruction as the ultimate means to a life worth living. His lack of action is a lack of understanding, trying to let you know that because you don't destroy yourself, you'll never understand why life, in its almost paradoxical manner, seeks to survive through the act of destruction. Why does the cat kill? Why do we age, and why does flowers wilt? And why do flowers wilt? Why is it that we gain sustenance from other living things if we believe that our life is so important, right? This is sort of like a larger piece around what is life, and why is it weirdly hypocritical, and why is life so isolating in its own definition, where the means to pursue life and the means to extend your own life is almost antithetical, because the only way to do so that we know to, and the only way that we can, sort of naturally, is to consume others, is to consume the life of something else. It's a very interesting thing. He cannot exist among them. The man cannot exist among these other beings in life if he does not destroy. The man who does not destroy is a lie. This is almost devious in its construction. It's a very well-known sort of tactic that you can use to manipulate people. I won't get too deep into it because it's starting to get into like pseudoscience stuff. But it is true that if you repeat something long enough and you just keep repeating it, that eventually people sort of naturally forget that it's not even true, because the repetition of something almost gives it more weight, even though you've given no reason for it to be true. Like, if you yourself just keep repeating the same sentence, eventually somebody will believe you. Even if you're the only one who says it, even if you give no reason. And when you have at least one person who believes you, when the two of you repeat it, it starts to become more and more of a truth. Because we're very easy to lie to. There's a lot of ways to short-circuit our belief in things. And repetition is one of those things. And repetition that's spread among multiple people, that is in its own way a form of repetition, sort of further enhances that, right? Further exaggerates that effect. The man who does not destroy cannot love, only contort. Half-formed solutions temper him, owner of nothing himself. The man who does not destroy cannot love. That's a very interesting statement, because I can't really tell why. The man who does not destroy cannot love. I guess because you cannot love a living thing. And because you do not destroy, it is by all of these things back here that would make it so that you are not really alive. You're not really a being. You can't love because that's a feeling that is only reserved for those who are truly alive. A feeling that you don't have because you don't partake in this pathway of destruction. You can only contort. You can only go along with the motions of love. And there is a particular flow and emotion to love, right? Conversation can be very mechanical in the way that you simply listen and you repeat, and having an open ear to somebody is really a lot to make someone feel good. I sound very manipulative right now, but it's sort of I don't know. Do I sound am I a bad person? Half-formed solutions temper him, owner of nothing himself. Half-formed solutions temper him, owner of nothing himself, that you are so malleable that even something that shouldn't be even thought of as a valid approach is enough to give you experience, is enough to give you a sense of stability within your structure. Because a half-formed solution isn't really a solution. Because what is a half-formed solution? What does it solve? If it's half-formed, it solves nothing. It's almost it's almost paradoxical in its construction, right? But it tempers you. Why does it temper you? Because you're so malleable. But because you're so malleable, even something that solves nothing is enough to sort of change you and to have hold and sway over you. Owner of nothing himself. You have nothing because you do not choose to destroy it. Wow. This is an amazing... That's such an amazing piece of writing. And we've only done one thing so far. This is the thing about narrative games that I really enjoy. From Road Warden to Wildermyth to this, all of them have this quality about them. It's the understanding that the story, even if it's a game story, has the ability and the capabilities and the means to be just as meaningful as any other great work that we've ever seen within the space. This game, much like Road Warden does in its own way though, takes that and says, I'm going to make an entire game mechanic out of it. And I think to me does so very well. And I think if you enjoy visual novels, this is almost an evolution of that concept, but taken to a much greater extreme and with a level of quality that really, really says there's something that you want to see here, and there's something amazing about the things that you're going to experience because there's so much care being taken about the novel portion of the visual novel aspect of the game. And yet it's not like, the visual portion of the game, the gameplay portion of the game is bad, because I'm making these very complex decisions with very limited resources and like aspects. Like I'm thinking about this in the same way that I think about a macro-based RTS. It's like I'm playing like a text-based version of Warcraft 3 where I'm like, okay, well, what is the next correct move here? What do I do with all these different variables? How do I make sense of these bits of information? These half-formed pieces of information. It's an imperfect knowledge game that's in contrast to something like chess, but using text as the backing mechanic. It's very good. She's so big now. Yes, Jag. Yes, Jag. She's very big now. I want to go. I'm ready. What are you ready for, Mons? Hello, Mons. What are you ready for? The machine. Do you understand what's going to happen? We're going to make the world better so we can leave this bunker and everything will be great. Will I get a tattoo? Yes. Yes? I don't know if you're going to get a tattoo. I'm just going to send you inside the machine. You seem really happy. I should have never sent Ula. If I knew about talking to them, I would have talked to them first. Just before you go, do you remember why? So we don't forget how to come back. It's coordinates and the time to be there. But I won't forget. Oh, so the tattoo tells you where to go so as to not be lost. And that's an interesting line because then it shows that this time travel thing is not necessarily safe. Something like, Inception was a bad call. Inception is not about time travel. Sorry, I keep thinking that Inception. But something like, say, Tenet, or even like any real time travel story, a lot of them downplay the dangers of time travel. Like, a lot of them don't really touch upon the mechanics of it and sort of make you come to grasp with how complex a thing like time travel is going to be. In fact, one of the few pieces of media that does touch on it very well is Futurama. When Fry and Bender go inside the machine, and they go too far, and then the universe ends, and then they have to keep going until it loops back on itself, and the universe gets recreated, right? Because that's a real problem that could happen to you, is you might be lost there forever. And what's funny is that I just finished reading a book called Before the Coffee Gets Gold. I finished reading the compilation of the short stories recently, but it's a book that deals with this concept of time travel and how easy it is to be lost. And I'm not kidding you. That book has roughly the same idea of you can be lost within time, but with the use of coffee as the timer. I know you won't, Mons, but just to be sure, 10 years is a long time. I guess. You don't know anything, Mons. You're 8 years old. You hadn't even lived 10 years. You don't even know. You were only conscious within the last 2 years. Kids only really understand things that are going on once they're 6 or 7. Everyone has succumbed to a kind of madness. A puritanical obsession with violence and destruction. A belief that killing is the only worthwhile and virtuous action. Even the most rational and intelligent dedicate their talents towards creating weapons that can destroy the people and environment around them. Survival is only possible in groups dedicated to destroying others, though nobody is ever truly safe. And few live beyond their 20s. Nobody seems to know, understand, or care about the origins of this mania. It is treated as self-evident truth and is loosely known as vetiverism. I wonder what that means. Vetiverism. Or like, how would I read this? Verism, the verity of something is like the truth. But what does the veter mean? What is the root of that? This is the present day, so it's still bad. What's interesting about this is that this just sort of tells you more about the piece of writing that you wrote, but the fact that you can infer all of this from reading the poem is, I think, a very powerful thing to be able to see. And I still do wonder, what does Jag see in this drawing? It's a vase with birds in it. 3 birds. 3 baby birds in a vase. It's them. Maybe he's seeing them. and the pool of water at the bottom. Is that a receipt? Wait, we have ourselves Dear Jay. It's like a letter. Dear Jay, what tense anymore cannot it less? Jokes aren't funny. Jokes aren't funny. Killed our masters. What? Well, time of the Vetiverse. It seems like Mons really wants to go. So maybe we send Mons. And we have a bit of information now that we can play with. Before, we simply sent somebody to scope out the timeline to understand what was within the timeline, right? But now we have some interesting things. We can send somebody back to time of the Vetiverse with the drawing or the poetry. We can send Mons back in time, and we can get her to kill someone or talk to someone. For instance, with the poetry, we know about the author of the poetry, which is Sia Lido. There's a research lab, which I don't think it's really mentioned yet. Woldote sounds like a shit post on Dota 2. Weapons factories, which we know about in terms of the culture there, that they believe in these weapons, and the Vetiverse themselves. I don't think this child is going to kill the... I don't think she's going to be able to kill the Vetiverse. And I think it's worth it for us to understand them. But I don't think this 8-year-old child is going to be she's not... I don't think she's going to be able to rebel against these people who believe and have almost perfected the art of war. I'm curious to see what the drawing says, because the drawing is almost strange in the way that it is, right? We don't know who Woldote is, and I don't think she's mentioned the Woldote anywhere. Woldati? Woldote. Destroyers Alive. Sia Lido. Vetiverse songs. Jog. I need to learn about who is Woldote. But I'm assuming there's only one more action in this timeline before we can't do anymore. I'm going to send Jag with his drawing back to the time, and he's going to learn from Sia Lido. Because Sia Lido is an artist who wrote this song. And if he brings this drawing to them, I wonder what they're going to say about this drawing. I know Mons is really excited to go, but Jag, I think, is going to be an interesting thing to learn about with his drawing, because it's a piece of the modern time. And in a way, when you learn from somebody, they also learn from you. And I wonder if using this drawing, we can sort of help this person see what we see today. Or if he's going to die. Confirm. This is a very haunting loading screen. Ever truly... She's so big now. Did you learn anything new? He's 19 and he's violent. Yes. A number of Vetiverse wanted to make a push for total dominance. They began working together, secretly, due to the shameful nature of working so closely with others. And were using slave labor to develop new weapons. They felt once total dominance was established, all things would be excused in their fulfillment of Vetiverse principles. What's interesting is that they have a shame about working together, but they feel this natural desire to work together as a means for an end, as this push for total dominance. What's interesting too is that they're not above using the concept of unity in order to get to their means, not just for themselves, but by using others as well, the slave labor. Slaves in unison are effectively like a united group, just united by a very bad elements of human nature and united for a purpose that is not of their own choosing. What sort of weapons? That was their other shameful secret. These were not honorable combat weapons, so they believed in like face-to-face combat in a very glorious, honorable, sort of in-your-face, Street Fighter style combat. But clandestine devices based on old technologies which could wreak mass destruction. Weather manipulation being one of them, which is key to today because we know about the acid rain. What's interesting is that it says, based on old technologies, as if this is a future world of ours that's so far in the future that the reason why it's the year 462 is because all time of, say, the 2000s of now has disappeared. Sounds like they succeeded. Yes, but perhaps we can stop them. I learned the name of a man instrumental in the project, Woldote. Okay, so apparently, maybe the game was a little bugged out, because I don't think we were supposed to know his name yet. I don't think we were supposed to know the name of Woldote yet. Maybe you shouldn't be aware of the name yet. Good work. But now we have a name of Woldote. And there's an unknown time period as well from beforehand. And that time period is actually very far away. If we assume that their belief makes them truly immortal, that there is almost like a techno-magical way that this affects the people who believe in this sort of lifestyle, then maybe they have lived for 100 years, this Woldote. But we can still go here, actually. We can go here. We can bring the Veritas poetry. And we can learn about Woldote with mods. Good luck, mods. V-I-V. That is a terrifying loading screen. Mons gained the Vetaveros trait. God damn it! And she has a sniper rifle. Shit. Did you learn anything new? Yes, a number of Vetaveros want to make a push. Oops. There was another shameful secret. Okay, oops. Okay, well, she gave you the same information. Oops. I have a sniper rifle. A sophisticated weapon with incredible range. So Woldote is the one who's going to be doing things. He's violent and she's a Vetaverist. I don't want to send either of them. I'm going to send the ever-fertile Ula to go back there. And we're going to see what happened. Send Ula to back to discover what happened then. Fertility world, what walk you wick? What did you discover? So, stack of newspapers, poster, and Bergamus art. Quite a lot. It's a lot more peaceful than the time of the Vetaverse, so I was able to learn quite a bit. Not only about the period I went to, but even earlier eras. What did you learn about the past? Well, tell me about the era you visited first. You had everything. Planes, trains, cars, global communication. You get anything you wanted. Go anywhere. They are big, beautiful cities. Everyone is young. Everyone works under Nerolian principles. It's almost perfect. Except what? She's 31 now. The people there are broken. It is as if they cannot find anything to focus upon achieving. Their relationships with each other are hollow and petty. They throw themselves into entertainments, but even there, they seem culturally ambivalent. That's interesting. In a way, what she's trying to paint a picture of is a society that is so utopian and so free of struggle that you lose all purpose. As if to say, this idea, and it's a really old philosophical concept of equating the struggles of life with the idea of being human. Because if you don't have any struggles and you don't have mortality and you don't have these things, then are you truly human in life? It's a very interesting concept that it sort of, I do in many ways disagree with, that you can still be human even without the struggle, but I don't really know. Again, it's one of those open-ended thoughts within philosophy as a whole. What did you learn about the past? I gathered variables for 2 different periods prior to the time I visited. I couldn't get anything further about it. Very good, tell me about them. Years before the time I went to there was a lot of activity. A prosperous period where a lot of stuff was built. Before that was something called the Great Smothering. What's the Great Smothering? It was actually referred to as the Great Beginning. The term smothering was seen as a bit subversive towards Nerolianism, emphasizing what came before rather than what came afterwards. There was a growing anti-Nerolian sentiment in the time I went to, though it was still somewhat underground. What is Nerolianism? The Great Beginning and the smothering seems interesting. And it's interesting to sort of equate this with the before and the after period, right? It's something that you see a lot in various modern day historical terms for things. Like we say things like the Great Depression, which implies that it was really good before and it got really bad during that time period. Or the Roaring 90s, as if to say that like every other time period before then was not as so loud and like powerful as the 90s in the States, right? Or like the Century of Humiliation, right? To refer to that time period of like Chinese history. Like these things give you a sense of like, okay, what was it before and after? The Century of Humiliation being like China was great before, and then during that time period it like wasn't. Because it's fascinating that it touches on that idea, because it's something that you don't really pay attention to. A lot of the time when you're taught about these terms, you're taught about it in very absolute terms, and you're taught about it in a way that emphasizes memorization of those terms, and for you to look at it as, okay, this is what it is, and this is what you should be thinking about when you think about these times. You should correlate this time period with this term. but they never really ask you to break down what it means when you are taught about these things. At least where I am, they don't really teach you to think about why it means this. They only go over the events and sort of in a very light manner, let's say. What exactly was smothering? The past. Great Smothering was what they called the period during which they eradicated everything from the past. Records, culture, arts, everything. Anything from the past that held any kind of inherent psychological or artistic value. Everything from the smallest teacup design to the largest architectural structure was destroyed if it didn't adhere to certain Nerolian principles. And when preserving such things was punished, though it seems like most people at the time believed fully in the concept. This is a very, very poignant thing as well, because this is something that we see within history today, right? In a lot of places, for instance, the Cultural Revolution within China, a lot of different things change, and a lot of people sort of feel like there's a new beginning and an older past that must end. And there's a lot of different actions that are taken that sort of force a lot of these artifacts of that time to disappear. And you see this for any sort of change, right? Any major change. Hell, you can even look at like World War II and sort of the fall of Nazi Germany, right? All of those things are basically gone now. And that's in many ways a great smothering concept as well. I'm not saying it's like a good thing. Sorry, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying that it's good that it's gone. But what I'm really trying to point out is that this can happen to even things that are good and are destroyed for a bad reason, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria, for instance. Let's say, right? Like it's the destruction of something doesn't necessarily imply or good or bad. It's the context which really matters. And relating this back to the Vedavarius sort of mindset, it's interesting that they believe in destruction itself. That they don't look at the context of the destruction. They look at the context of destruction as a means towards some always good. Like destruction itself and the presence of destruction is always a good thing. And that's interesting because in at least the modern day world, to some degree, the destruction that we see within the world and the way that we decide whether it's a good or a bad thing is a highly contextual, very heavily debated, very heavily sought after sort of set of truths that we try to find and to help guide us in determining whether or not it was a good or a bad act. And I can sort of begin to see a thread that led to the Vedavarists within this timeline, from this timeline, if you consider that the Nerolian culture, that the Nerolian mindset, that these values are sort of leading to a stagnation, at least in people's minds. That all of a sudden, maybe this idea, and this is my theory, but this idea of chasing destruction and chasing the act of struggle, chasing the act of destruction has given these people meaning in their lives when they have lost it because of the utopian nature, and thus they've carried it forward, and so they only know how to live by destroying. Why? So it depends on who you ask. There's the accepted history, the subversive one, and all sorts of conspiracy theories. How about give me the conspiracy theories, because I like to hear about aliens. There were lots stories, though it became hard to tell which were intended as entertainment and which were disguised as it. Some people were desperate for things to believe beyond Nerolianism, I think. Go on. Some suggested that the smothering was an attempt to cover up terrible things for the humanity's past. Things which would make it impossible to go on. Which is, I mean, in many ways, sort of true to our current life. There's a lot of things I think humanity would love to move on from, but it's important to bring it to light and deal with it. Like, it's important to bring these things to light and deal with them, because simply ignoring them doesn't make it go away. It simply makes the pain that was suffered and the things that have happened all the more painful for those who had to experience it. And this is sort of true of any type of loss in life, any type of event in life. It's if you don't ever come face to face with it and you come to terms with it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on you. It simply means that the effect is something that you no longer have any control over. You simply go by whatever happens to you. I knew a man who believed there was a way of suppressing human beings' inherent supernatural abilities. There was also this idea that violence and chaos were humanity's true birthright. The only things which would bring a person true fulfillment, and that would lead to the Vedavarius mindset. It's funny about the suppressing human beings' inherent supernatural ability. Sounds a lot like X-Men. I think a lot of it was just the malaise. People yearning for something other than the world they found themselves in. I don't think there's anything of value to these theories. Well, maybe. I don't know. A subversive version? Well, let's say I don't think there's anything of value. Tell me about this prosperous period. It was an incredible time. I shouldn't have skipped the... Oh, that was a skip ahead. Oops, I didn't realize. It was an incredible time of great people, though that might just be the self-glorification of history. It wasn't big or grandiose, that went against the Nerolian principles of the time. It was a pure kind of beauty, an efficient kind of luxury. Nerolian? Yeah. It was the foundation and the purpose of the world back then. What is Nerolianism? Essentially, it was the idea of focus being the most important quality. Removing anything that held no value. I have an image for this. It's not this. I have an image of this. POV. Marie Kondo got really popular. This could be the final artifact. This could be the beginning of the end, right? This shitpost on Twitter could be the beginning of the end, and the year 2035 could be the end of the world as we know it. The year is 2035. Marie Kondo holds up the condemned man to the crowd. Does this man spark joy? The crowd jeers. No, he does not. She nods silently and throws him into it. This could actually be how Nerolianism... Oh my god. There's a timeline where Marie Kondo ushers in the apocalypse and the end of the world as we know it. That's amazing. In Nerolianism, one must think like the arrow, not the target. There was little respect for a person who had many interests, for instance. You were meant to be singularly dedicated and pure, and become a perfect expression of something. That's an interesting paragraph. I mean, every single paragraph so far has been incredibly interesting. And my choices have been very interesting too, because it seems like you can't get everything. But this one in particular is fascinating. One must think like the arrow, not the target. Because the target is sort of the goals that we set for ourselves. But the arrow is the continuous journey that it would take to get to the target. Is that what it means? Or does it mean to think like the tool and not the end goal? As in, you are but a tool for some larger end goal, but there is no end goal. What does that even mean? It's hard to decipher, and I wonder if it's just because my brain is starting to get frazzled. There was little respect for a person who had many interests, for instance. Okay, so let's read the rest of it and see if we can light it back. You were meant to be singularly dedicated and pure, become a perfect expression of something. In many ways, this is sort of like the craftsman mindset, where you were where you're almost tasked with this idea of doing what it is that you choose, or maybe that you're told to do, and just being the best that you can at this one singular thing, right? It's something that in many ways doesn't pay off in real life. It's sort of the weird hypocritical way that work is carried out in the modern day, where we assign everyone to a very small specific box, but just because you're really good within that box doesn't mean that you'll actually get the rewards that are I forget the term now, but in value, in line with the value of the output that you get from somebody who is such a singular expert at this thing, right? In a way that sounds a bit like that. ... For example, it was distasteful for an artist, musician, or filmmaker, say, to release lots and lots of work. To people back then, an artist like that obviously lacked vision and conviction. It was evidence of his low character to just throw everything out there in the hope something resonated with people. It was also irresponsible to clutter people's cultural lives in this way. This is a very interesting statement too. I need to drink some water. It's a fascinating statement because in many ways it mirrors a lot of the discussions around slop content today. Like slop jobs. There's a lot of slop jobs out today. But why do we call it slop? It's the same way that Deschamps' toilet is a toilet. It's the same way that we see art that's hung in a gallery, but not in the things that we wear, the things that we sit on. It's the ways that some people look at fashion and say that's not art. The same way that some people look at, writing and say that's not art. But it's all just art. It's this idea that you have to have some purpose for it. That you can't just make something for the sake of creation. It's fascinating. And it's fascinating because it mirrors a lot of the things that you hear about today from people, where you see a shitty game come out and you say, oh, it's just another factory slop game. But it's like, hey, listen, I'm not a big fan of the gameplay loop of Assassin's Creed, but you can't deny that there's something there, right? Even though they make a ton of them, it still doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a work of art in its own way. That none of these games are like a work of art of some kind, right? But it's this idea that is this interesting split between the products that you buy and the piece of art that is now within grasp, within reach of you. It's like both of these concepts have been mixed together. And I use games as an example because because we're playing a game, but this really extends to a lot of other things too. It had like the functional side versus the artistic side. We took a deep dive on smart toilets once. We saw how cool these smart toilets looked, but I said it's just a toilet. Why do you need a smart toilet? It's because I wasn't looking at the art, I was looking at the function, a receptacle to hold my bowels. And to see that this was the Nerolian mindset to require only perfection almost, I can see how incredibly soul-sucking that is. Because some people would go for that, but other people don't. But both are just as valid as the other, in my mind. Revered artists were those who only ever put out one or two things, and often very simple, but the idea was that they had channeled themselves into their ideas fully into this single work. That was a kind of art, and art is such a philosophy desired, which in many ways is sort of what the consumer today desires. Like, I remember, for instance, at the Game Awards, and this is actually very topical because somebody reposted about the slow clap soccer game. When that soccer game came out, and I think collectively, me and chat had this idea of like, oh god, another soccer game. But then we saw that it was made by Slow Clap, and all of a sudden we decided it's good. But it's like, maybe it would have been a good game even if it wasn't made by Slow Clap. Maybe having another soccer game isn't necessarily bad. And maybe soccer games in general aren't that bad. Maybe FIFA isn't even the worst game ever. Maybe it is actually kind of fun, even if it's really expensive. It is not art to me because I'm not into it, but my nephew loves FIFA. Is his opinion any less valid? I don't think so. But then, it's not coming from a place of love for him, because I do love my nephew. But it's coming from just the idea that everyone can enjoy something. And so is that really wrong? It's fascinating. What about the Vetiverism? I had mentioned at a few clubs and art shows, but they threw a lot of isms around. Bergamism, I didn't really understand that. Seederist, that was used as a slur, sort of. Oh, because she's a seederist, but I said that she was really fertile. So I cared about her fertility, and she became a seederist. What does cedar do? A cedar forest. It grows in forests and it drops lots of eggs. Is that normal? Is that what trees do? They drop a lot of eggs? Or is it that they drop sperm? I don't really know. But they do drop acorns. Does a cedar grow particularly more than other trees? Is that like the normal state of a cedar? Vetiverism, however, was an art movement, sort of. It was seen as some provocative, subversive idea, but people didn't really know what it meant. Only that it was associated with violence. In Nerolian society, that was sort of sexy, though. Yep. The destructiveness of Vetiverism was the cause of our current situation. We had to stop it before it develops. I think the root of our current predicament lies deeper than this. This is a very interesting take here, because this is entirely in how you view it. And this game has been very good at this so far, and it's very hard to sort of explain, but I think this is the best way to explain it, and the best time to. Not only is the writing really good at the implications of understanding the world, it's really good at the implications of what you want to do as well. Not just in terms of the characters, but in terms of expressing how you as a player understand the game. It's very reminiscent to me of Road Warden in terms of that complexity. Where in Road Warden, a lot of your choices and a lot of the things that you can choose to do is very, very heavily dependent on whether or not you believe it to be a certain type of understanding. If you believe that the understanding is leading towards that the Vetiverism movement is the source of this, that this idea of a utopia, even though people are bored, is necessarily it's like a necessary evil that you have to be bored with your life, then you would go with the second choice. For me, though, I see it differently. I see a society that has lost all purpose in life, that is sort of told to follow a single ideal, that in this way, individualism, expression, and freedom has been squashed. And in this way, it's not really much different from the Vetiverist mindset. The Vetiverist mindset has a much more dangerous angle that also leans in with, this idea of you must destroy things. And you must destroy them in a more physical way, which is to mean to kill things and to break things down. But it's all encompassing, and it's all isolating, and it's all It's all suffocating, just like Nerolianism is. Just as Nerolianism denies your freedom and individuality and expressiveness, so does Vetiverism. And one leads to the other, but we see during this timeline that there were tons of them. And we didn't go through all the options for the conspiracy theories because I messed up. But you see that there's so many different things that people were thinking of, that there's different theories around about why we do certain things. And these movements, Bergamism, Cedarist, these are all different ways that people want to see themselves and express themselves. In fact, Ula got Cedarist when we told her that she's fertile. And so she started to believe that about herself. That's a way that she has now chosen to carry her life. Because that belief results in, it's sort of a bias in the way that you live your life, as all beliefs do. It's sort of, everything that you believe in shows in the ways that you sort of live your life, right? But that's a freedom of choice that she has today. And she right now is living alongside a Vetiveris, Mons, who believes in the Vetiveris mindset. But it's that element of multiple people being able to come together in spite of their differences that I think is so powerful, because I think that's the key here. At least in my understanding of this world, to me the key is not necessarily Vetiverism or Nerolianism. I feel like you have to go even further and further and further. Prosperity through immaculacy. So the mod and I are playing Pikmin Bloom, and my area doesn't have many good things. But one thing that it does have is immaculation. That's all I can really say. She's getting a lot of information about immaculation. And it's not a perverted thing. It's just funny that my area, for some reason, has a bunch of things about immaculation. In fact, it's apparently not the only area. It's a whole belief system around, like, pregnancy. This is the Nerolian mindset. Now look at Ula. Look at the way that her character sheet is moving. She's hiding herself and then revealing herself. She's like wiping her hair back. I wonder if that's a result of the Cedarism or if that changes over time. Jag is simply solemn. He just sort of looks down and has a sort of like very cold and almost intense stare about him. And Mons just looks incredibly evil. She looks evil. We have a bunch of things here, and the music feels very it feels like we're going through art movements as a whole, which I mean is interesting because the game almost describes itself as that. But art movements are interesting to sort of look at the world through, because art movements are also tied a lot to time periods, and you actually see this in real life. Like a lot of art movements happen as a result of various time periods, like and various things happening during that time. And you see the events of the world shaping these art movements too. Like it's like World War II had a profound effect on art at a time. And today, sort of like hyper modern sort of corporate structure of like say the Western world, at least in North America, shapes a lot of the artwork of today. Where you can play a game like Spreadsheet, which is a game about spreadsheets, but you're doing math in it, and it has a corporate theme to it. Like that's something that you would never see before. But it's the world informs the art period, and so having this reference to these art period like eras, in the same way that empires sort of are sort of described as within history, right? Is a fascinating parallel to draw, because really there's no difference between them. Both are informed by something of the times, except one expresses itself through art and the other expresses itself through means, through physical means, through mental means, right? Through a series of control elements. It's fascinating. Poster. Clown. Agrios, Knights. Mum kicked me out of the house, stuck warning labels on a cutlery. Fuck. Another lost soul who was saved by what? What? Dissonances from with the dirtiest, messiest Agrios muscle mess. Keech. Be disclosed day of. Entry only peralted. What? Upon cutting of clothes. Oh, entry only permitted upon cutting of clothes. Oh. You must be naked. You must be naked to go into this place. That sounds awful. And special guest Ame Gend. The only way out of this is Bergamism Ol Ame, our beloved pure Koti, who gave us the cleanliness and emptiness and boredom that we so love. Do you like our poster, Puri? So Pure Koti is probably the one who eventually made Nerolianism. Every man and woman must make choices in life. Some choices are bigger, some are smaller, sometimes the smaller ones are actually big ones. Make the right choice and more to Clutter Knight. Clutter Knight. Who is this guy anyway? Brought to you by the Pacholian... By the Pacholian Assembly? I don't know what that is. These pieces of art, this feels a lot like Blueprints in its construction too. Where Blueprints has a lot of this element of you must actually observe and examine and draw links to what you know and to what it is that you're seeing. It has a lot of those same elements, but with this actually very cool art style. And as far as I know, it's like FMV and a lot of physical media that was scanned in for the game. So this is a very impressive piece of work here. And I actually think I need to eventually open up like a canvas to play this game fully. But again, this is a review copy, so I'm not going to play the whole thing. We only have half an hour left. Stack of newspapers. A random collection of newspapers from the period immediately following the Great Smothering through to this time of suppressed tension, which is a new thing that we didn't know about. It offers some insight into the development of Nerolian society's initiation, prosperity, and the beginnings of its disintegration during this time. It also contains information about many other things such as major disasters, events, and culture. Much of the news is minimally reported and seems purely functional. However, it appears that the purpose of newspapers in the Nerolian society was not to entertain or inform generally, but to only offer usable, practical data for those who needed such information. Stock markets slump as crisis rattles investors. Uh-oh, this is very topical. We're maybe only a couple of ways away from... years away from Nerolianism. And think about that. Think about what that means. That we're only maybe a couple of years away from Nerolianism. That this game, in its construction, is in a way an artifact in much the same way that this game is trying to present within its own framework of our times. This game is an artifact of our times. You can sort of almost draw a clear line of when this person started development versus when they ended. If we had computers during the time of the Great Depression, you would see a lot more games like This War of Mine, or a lot more games like Stardew Valley. You would probably see a lot more Stardew Valley games, or like Harvest Moon, but focused specifically on farming, right? This game could only exist in this time. It's sort of fascinating to sort of draw that parallel to what the game is trying to tell in its story to what it is today in our real world. That's a very interesting parallel that I never really thought of. Bergamist art. What is this? What do I see? This is an interesting piece of pointillism, but I can't tell if that's the term, but it feels like pointillism. It's like a bunch of like honeycombs all put together. It's the way that the light shines in the middle and the shading makes it feel like a 3D circle. But then it's the way that the red feels like a fog almost. As if no matter how much structure you give something, it's still unclear what it is you're seeing. Because now you see the shape of it, but what does that even mean for you when it's still as foggy and as unknown as this? Also, if you hear a child screaming, that's my niece. She's playing upstairs. it's the child is okay. She's just very loud and that's just children. So this is suppressed tensions. Okay, so this is suppressed tensions. That was the time that I sent them in. Aimlessness prevails. Minds and streets are empty, but since this emptiness is perceived as good according to the time, most people adhere to established ideas of living. There are, however, growing signs of anxiety among small, private, and despised subcultures, some of which contain a sense of past, undefinable grievances. The Vetiveris, the Sidarians, and the Bergamists are three such secretive, disgruntled groups. Now, I've only sent Ula so far, because Ula has been the only person that I've thought to send this entire time. But I'm realizing that this game also puts almost like a very interesting limit on how much you can play, right? It's not a bad limit either. You can't keep sending people back to the past because eventually they will die out. And you have to be careful about who you send and how you send them, because presumably as they get older, their experiences lock them in more, but also it may change how they speak, because again, their personalities will change over time. Now I'm starting to understand the warning that was there. This is the Nerolian background. This is the Vetiveris background. The Vetiveris background is incredibly sad. The Nerolian background, however, is a little cold. Actually, you can change the background to a number of these. It's not tied to the specific time period. You can just keep changing them. Each one has its own weird feeling. This one looks like a tile and like an eyeball staring at you. This actually is just a tiled floor. This actually looks like the tile that I have right now. This is... I just had to check for a second. I think we go with the weird, funky one. It looks like space. We're gonna go back to prosperity through immaculacy, which immaculacy is like, I don't know, sudden or surprise or just... What does the term mean again? I've only ever heard the term used with immaculate conception, which is a whole different concept. Immaculacy. No, not the movie. This game is giving Blueprints. This game is giving Road Warden. This game is giving a lot of the puzzle game grades that I'm playing recently, which I think is amazing. Immaculacy refers to being immaculate, meaning perfectly clean, pure, and without any mistakes or perfect pregnancy? What? Prosperity through immaculacy. People have an abundance of wealth, productivity, and time. It could easily be deemed a utopian period. This is the life that I want for myself. The values of Nerolianism run throughout society and thought. It advocates simplicity, clarity, and purity, with complexity, abstraction, and multitudes regarded as disgusting evils. The person, purposeful of thought and singular in lifestyle, is celebrated. It is aesthetically minimalist, culturally bland, and socially honest. I'm gonna send Ula, I want you to go back there, and I want you to tell me about this world. And I want you to show them both Cedarist with your body and the Bergamist with this piece of art. I want you to go to the radical designers. I want you to kill Nerolianism. No, I want you to go learn from the radical designers and bring these things to them. In fact, I want you to subvert them. I want you to subvert them, and I want you to subvert them with Jag's drawing. And I want you to think about how to spread Cedarism throughout the entire world. I don't like her face. She's terrifying. You look well. I don't think she looks well. We have a Nerolian fashion magazine added to the inventory, and she's docile. What does docility mean? Docility and timid are two different things. I know what docile means as a feeling. Like, I can imagine a docile dog, but I don't quite recall the exact meaning of docile. You, how was it? You look well. I don't know if I should say you look well. Does she look well? That face says so much, but also so little. It's hard to say what emotion that face is trying to give. It's almost pained and almost terrifying and almost uneasy, but almost like very sophisticated, classy. Not like, it's like, what's that movie? Very burlesque. It's very burlesque. How was it? I enjoyed it. It was a happy time. There was energy and optimism for the future. A sense that things were getting better all the time. It felt strange to be the only person who knew that things wouldn't. What were the people like? To me, to us, they seemed odd, but good. They were honest, direct, but somewhat boring. They were dedicated to their chosen work or purpose, which might make them seem simple, though in such a society, the smallest idiosyncrasy became hugely important, right? Because anybody who differs even slightly from it all would be seen as being so strange and so calamitous to the fabric of the society that's being built, that they would almost be seen as a bug in the system, something to be sort of fixed. Perception of an entire person could focus upon the use of a certain word, or a small mannerism, for instance. My stuttering. Well, what did you learn? It was hard to learn anything. The fundamental principle of society was Nerolianism, which meant the removal of all superfluous or alternate ideas, making it hard to discover anything beyond it. What is Nerolianism? Just tell me again. Essentially, it was the idea of focus being important. You're meant to be singly dedicated and pure. Okay, I get it, sorry. Do you think we can influence this time period in any meaningful way? Despite how well things were going, I think so. There were definitely elements we could exploit. There was constant discussion about society and its undertakings by everyone. Such discussions were odd in that they focus on what should be forgotten and consigned to the past, rather than where to direct the future. So thinking about how to differ yourself from the generations before, and how to almost not fall into what you perceive to be the same mistakes, than necessarily where one should be going. It's fascinating because I've seen this play out in a very different context. I've seen this play out in a corporate context. And this is a weird thing to relate to, but I promise it's just as important as what you're about to sort of hear from the game. Within a corporation, whenever a mistake happens, there's a lot of emphasis on trying to not do that mistake again. And there can be a lot of emphasis on the competitive aspect of it as well, where a lot of time and effort is being placed on the competition, and a lot of the focus can be lost, and you end up with this idea of we must be different in some way from the competition. Focus on how we can be not what they are. So much so that almost all of the mind share of the corporation could be spent on, and in many ways wasted on, trying to not be something that they never really think about what they should be. And then you can actually extend this to life as a whole, because when you're so busy doing that for your work for 8 hours a day, you almost come home and you have that mindset for yourself. And I think a lot of us sort of carry that, because again, a lot of places really think about this, is what not to do. You never really think about who you want to be or what you want to be, because a lot of life in general is sort of set up to guide you on a path and says, okay, don't do these things, instead do these things. But you do these things because it's in contrast to the things that you shouldn't do. But when you live like that for 8 hours of your day, whether it's school or work, and you come home and that's all you ever really know, you never really get to flex your muscle to think about who you are. When you come face to face with that decision within life, it's fascinating to have to sort of grapple with the idea, wrestle with it, and come to a conclusion very quickly in the way that society sort of expects you to. You turn 18 and you finish high school, you go off to post-secondary, right? I didn't have that experience, but I had a similar experience in trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, right? Whether it's programming or working at the family business or doing something. I had to figure out something very quickly because there wasn't time. It was like as soon as you're of age and you're, legally employable, you need to go think of something to do. And that's how life was for a lot of time. Again, the chimney sweeps started sooner. They started when they were like 5 years old, okay? So you had to go, be thankful that it was at 18. But still, it didn't really matter the age. What really mattered was that you never really had the ability to practice the skill of determining your own future. You never had the ability to determine your own life. And so to see this, and to sort of see it play out in the various aspects of our current day society, and to see that this society sort of has taken on that as a whole, and has sort of stopped targeting a goal as a society as a whole, and has effectively stayed stagnant, hasn't been growing, but has been simply growing more and more efficient, which in its own way is not necessarily a bad thing. You have to do both at the same time. But because they're not growing, eventually there's not enough substance to stand on. There's not enough of a life to live with, because there's not enough things to live life with. There was a woman called Tom Welk, for instance, who grew in prominence during the decade. She was a good leader and a unique thinker, and had a talent for foreseeing problems. A pivotal figure, I think. There were also intense arguments around design. Factions formed and rearranged themselves constantly around such ridiculous ideas. Life emoji. This game, honestly, is a very good, I think, commentary on many, many different things. Like, again, you could only also, hello chat, you can only ever point this to this time period. Like, you can only ever see this game as being an artifact of this time period that we're in. But at the same time, I think the voice from this time period, someone 50 to 100 years from now, could play this game. In the same way that we still read the great classic books of, ye olden days, and we still think about the lessons that they impart, I think you could do it with this game. It's that good of a piece of writing. And it's not like the game is bad. Again, the game is really good. The choices that I'm making, I am laboring over what to do. I'm trying my best to figure out a way to manipulate the world around me with all these different variables in place and in different timelines. I'm trying to effectively time travel in a way that serves the goals of what I want to do in this game and the game itself. And that's a fascinating concept that absolutely works. Things like the nature and purpose of corners, color contrast, or the shape of light switches. This is just designers. I'm just gonna tell you right now, designers There's something wrong with you. I'm the Vetiverist, you're the Nerolianist, okay? I'm the person who's like, this doesn't matter, like it's fine. You look at the light switch and you go, it's not round enough for the sake of this room, and it's gonna clash with my interior design decisions. Like it's not that serious, guys, okay? But this is how I feel like with most designers. Stare. This guy, stare. Okay, the designer, our resident designer, has just woken up from their work slumber and is now taking offense to what I said. I'm just saying, like this is it doesn't matter that much. But again, you are the Nerolian. I'm the Vetiverist. Not well. I'm not the Vetiverist. I'm human, man. I'm human. I don't ascribe to some idea. Okay, if it works, it works. Some things are functional. Some things are for design. They all adhere to the principles of Nerolianism, of course, but different in how to manifest them. There's a serious fear that art and design was how radicals could potentially subvert things. Matters more than what framework you use. It's magic. That cuts deep, and I'm sorry. I understand your plight now, and I'm sorry. When you related my insult in programming terms, and I felt what you felt, I realized that I was wrong. So thank you. Thank you for showing me the errors of my ways. Anyways, you actually should try Emacs. Really good editor. I actually really enjoy the Emacs way of doing things. Just use Evil Mode, because I think Evil Mode is the superior mode to handle things with. This statement is interesting. There was a serious fear that art and design was how radicals could potentially subvert things. It is today. Today, I think in today's world, art and the way that art and design can proliferate and be talked about, specifically the discussion of it, which is, to me, in itself, its own form of art. It's fascinating because I think it does lead to a subversion of things today that we really need to sort of pay attention to, right? And because sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but for the most part, it's always something that you do want to sort of have. Because without that expression of and the freedom of art, you have no way to speak about things. And here, I think the speaking of these things is fantastic because you get to speak about things in a way that really hones in on what this thing is. Like a a very sort of contrived example, because it was sort of interesting the way that it eventually played out and how much marketing that there was behind it. But something like Kony 2012 or whatever it was, right? The like Kony stickers. The way that all of a sudden spread the idea of this dictator with just a very catchy sort of like, again, his name is just naturally catchy, but also this like weird sticker with his name, his face, and like the year. And how that also somehow carried the knowledge of the fact that he's a warlord who's incredibly evil, and the ways that sort of like spawned a movement behind trying to stop him. That's fascinating. You don't really get that from other means. It's hard to sort of get that from something that isn't within the realm of art and design. That sort of like subversive nature of like breaking something down and breaking down the structures that are around this, right? Or hell, even something like a Che Guevara thing. How Che Guevara became like a very, very, sort of iconic figure within, design circles. I mean, you see shirts with his face on it, even with like posters. It's sort of like that classic sort of poster look, right? And yet, it sort of brings to light both the things that he did and sort of the hypocrisy of his nature, maybe, to some degree. And also the things that he was fighting against, which is also hypocritical if you think about it in terms of like, the things that he was fighting against was not things that were publicly said by the people who were committing it, but it's things that they did anyways. It's like, this whole idea of like, a nation will seek to, like, let's say, well, like a nation will try to make itself look as good as it can, but in truth, it's like that nation behind the scenes is like bombing people. It's like, okay, well, you have good in one way and you have a really bad in the other. It's a hypocritical place. Like what is going on, right? So it's fascinating to sort of see this idea of art being used in that sense. And then you might even take it even further. You can go all the way to like military propaganda, right? Like, oh, you gotta, work for the country and build the weapons, right? And then you have different pieces of art that says this is evil and don't think about this and like this is like bad stuff, right? Like it's very, very interesting to see all of it come alive and to see this game tackle this topic, because it's a topic that is sort of interesting to me because you can't talk about it until it happens. because it doesn't exist until it happens. Until somebody thinks about it, there's no way to even begin to understand it because it has no existence. You have to intuit somehow this way of using art as a subversive tool. Pepper talk. I'm just saying it's interesting. Finally, there was a controversial idea that began to gather steam while I was there, that people over 50 should be encouraged to kill themselves. This is I'm not going to spoil the movie, but it's a very good movie. I can't even say the name now. I can't even say the name of the movie because it's a major plot point. Fuck, I'm sorry. Just know that there's a movie out there that's like this, and it's really good. That the fear was that they were more inclined to retain old, superfluous ideas, and also might have accumulated the power to maintain them. A man named Rero Higg, Rero Higg was the figurehead. The argument against his was that the young were more impulsive and were thus just as, if not more, likely to subvert Nerolianism. What's interesting is that this is also somewhat of the idea behind, or like the backing idea behind old people should off themselves because they're getting old and thus no longer useful, and sort of like this like idea of like somebody younger being more capable is also in many ways a theme that you find throughout Gattaca, which is a very old movie. I think that's the name of it. That you all should watch Gattaca. It's a great movie. Do you think he is right? People usually place the stress on the second syllable in superfluous. How did I say it? Superfluous. How did I say it? Wait. Is that not the second syllable? Superfluous. Is that how I say it? Or is that how I didn't say it? Superfluous. Did I say superfluous? Or did I say superfluous? Which one did I say? Well, now I'm self-conscious. All right? Now think about this. I'm not even speaking English right now. How do you know that I'm speaking English? Now I'm giving you existential dread. Enjoy. That's what you get. Of course not. Though I suppose you have a different perspective, being young. Watching us age, having never really known the old. You know, Wick, I remember you. What does that... Actually, that's interesting. How old is our character? Because we are a child who was taking care of other children. Ula saying that she remembers us means that we are no longer here for her. We're no longer present for her. She simply remembers us. Remember me. I mean, before we even had to set out in the reins. We were in the same children's facility. Did you know that? Do you remember me from back then? Vaguely, sure. Well, not really. I don't know. Even then, I was only 4 or 5. You were twice my age. And there were hundreds of us. But I noticed you. Why? What does it matter now? Where is she going with us? Why? There was something special about me. I wasn't. I felt special. That's narcissistic. I wasn't. When your boss says you've done a good job and you say, no, I didn't do a good job, don't do that. You're humiliating yourself for no reason. You might as well just accept it, but without fanfare. Just say thank you. I felt special is narcissistic. I was special is interesting because I no longer feel special, but I had a feeling of it. How so? You were too nostalgic to remember clearly. How so? I don't know exactly. There's a thin line between memory and imagination. Perhaps. I say superfluous. Superfluous. Like superfluous? Or superfluous? Or superfluous? What is this? I'm in a whole different timeline. Okay, so we've gotten away from the end. We are now in a whole different timeline. We've learned that there's something special about us, but we don't know what. It's interesting that these characters are coming to grips with the fact that they're aging much faster, and that to me, it's only maybe a single moment passed on. By the way, it's crazy that I've been deemed commander, and I'm throwing these kids into the fray, and now that these kids are older, it's like they don't really have a need to listen to me because I'm also a child. In a way, I wonder if they'll ever go back and they say, okay, well, I'm taking over now because you're just a child, you stupid child. Flowers of death. Nature corrects what humans cannot. Overwhelmed systems, experimental food supplies, and the glut of human bios make fertile ground for disease and deformity. Plague tears through this large but weakened populace quickly and destructively. Just as plants evolve protections against predators, the plant develops an ecosystem that will ensure no trace of humanity can ever taint it again. And I don't know how we got here, but something that we did within this timeline changed, eventually, the world that we see within the moment. The Vetavirus no longer exists. The suppressed tensions no longer exist. It's as if there's a single-track mindset all the way through that you can explore. And this, presumably, is just one way that it could have ever turned out. We can even go further back, or we can stay here and continue down this track, but either way, the end has changed, and the world is now going down a different route. And I can imagine this must extend in every single direction, because we could have done something here. I got a sniper rifle, I could have killed anybody here. I could have killed a World Dote. I could have been back here, and I could have killed the person, the pure culty, to get rid of Neurolianism as a whole. To maybe even start a whole new smothering. And yet I went back to prosperity through immaculacy, a world where everything was a utopia, and where everybody started to become... This was the beginning of the stagnation. And I said to Uller, a Siderist, with a piece of art that was from our current time, to learn from the people then, and to almost influence and get them to think differently. That was my hope. And maybe I did, but I didn't really think about the consequences of it. And this is the game. And you can just do this for any single time period. And you can get a bunch of items that change how you play the game. And you go through it in a way that is so reminiscent of an RPG. Like a genuinely powerful RPG, but with all the complexity that comes from a typical text-based game. But with all the fullness of gameplay that, let's say, like a modern take on like an RPG game would give you. Like, there's no real difference between you playing this and the types of choices that you might get within Baldur's Gate. And maybe I would even say the choices here feel even more powerful than the choices within Baldur's Gate 3. It uses the time travel mechanic very, very well. The pieces of art that it's created to show you this world and to show you this like fake existence of these ideas and how it brings them all to life. It's beautiful. It's fascinating. It's a mix of real art mixed in with, you know, digital, or I forget the actual term, but like imagined art. It's this mix of everything that makes it feel so real, and it's the way that it plays with the time travel mechanic and the amount of choice that it gives you. Because I can do any of this. I'm gonna send Mons, sniper rifle, kill Raro Hig. You can just do this. Or you can choose to have them learn. You can choose to have them help. You can choose to have them subvert. You can choose to have them do anything. And whatever you do, everything that you do has an effect on the world. And the effect that it's had is it's cut me off entirely. And I wonder how much further you can go with this concept. Because as it's shown right now, it feels like you have the world at your fingertips. And that's a feeling that you don't get from time travel games as they are today. This game is fantastic. This is a review copy, so I won't go any further. I think it's sort of in poor form to have a review copy and show you the entire game. But at the same time, it's a sort of informal review because there was no real restrictions. They just said, hey, try it out, let me know how you like it. And I think this is a good stopping point to give you a taste of what could be possible. The taste of the control that you have. The pure mechanical gameplay that you have here is such a great way of using time travel as a game mechanic that, again, I've said this before, but visual novels seem to have the best way of representing time travel as a whole, and the way that you can sort of like read a book and you would go back and forth within the story. The difference is that this feels like one of those choose your own adventure books, but to a degree of variability that you can't get from a book. That hell, you might not even be able to get from a traditional game. It's a game that could only work within this form, presumably because of how complex it is. There's so many different branches. Like, it feels like I'm playing a genuinely complex strategy game, turn-based strategy game, where all of my choices have profound effects, and I need to really think about everything that I'm doing on various different levels. This combined with, honestly, genuinely good writing. This writing is powerful. It's incredibly accurate to what it is trying to represent in this game world, and it never feels out of place. It never feels so confusing to read because it doesn't read like technobabble, but it never feels like it's not a part of the game. I don't feel taken out by a sentence or a word. This entire time I've forgotten that I'm not even talking to like real characters. It feels like I'm talking to real characters, but it's made by probably this like single person or like a single developer. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. But what they've made here is fantastic, and the team behind this, they're onto something. This is a really cool game. This game releases on the 27th, okay? I've irreparably ruined the timeline by sending Mons to assassinate someone, but you're gonna have to figure that out on your own on the 27th. I think this game is something to look out for, and this game is interesting that it was chosen for me, or like that they sent me a key, because again, it's fascinating to sort of think about how you would review a puzzle game without necessarily spoiling it. But I think as a whole, just showing you the possibilities of the choices that you have and how good it is at being able to play with these time travel mechanics within the framework of like a visual novel style game, brilliant stuff. Like genuinely good stuff. Before I go, I will say one thing. To the developer, you said that you weren't sure if award games were a good game to play on stream. I will say this as a counterpoint. When your game is this good, I don't think there's a way that anybody could not be enthralled by it, even just watching. Because the fact that the chat hasn't fallen asleep yet, that's pretty impressive. Because genuinely, there's something weirdly interesting about the story. And I think you shouldn't feel like your game is boring to watch. I think the people who will enjoy it, the people who do understand it, and the people who are willing to engage with it, there's an audience out there that loves this. I'm a part of that audience, right? Yeah, and seemingly this like chat is too, because this chat will just sit there and watch me play Blueprints and like Road Warden and like other very narrative heavy games for hours, right? Whenever I play a game with gameplay, that's when everyone disappears. Like that's how you know that there's an audience out there for this. Don't feel like it's too niche of a thing to be enjoyed. I think you've stumbled upon something fantastic here. And I can't wait to see what this is in full. And I can't wait to see this game, like, to actually play this game fully. But now I have a problem, because this game is so good that it's like, I don't know how to shuffle my list. On my list, it's like, I've got Clair Obscur, I've got, like, this game, I've got Blueprints, I've got, like, Road Warden, I got too many games. I need to figure all of this out.